Well, I'm here today with Dr. Neal Barnard, who is the president of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, the founder of the Barnard Medical Center, and oh my God, a plethora of books and articles. I mean, what are you up to? 10,000, something like that at this point?
We're working our way in that direction.
Anyway, thank you so much for taking the time today.
My pleasure.
Well, we've been working on your book, Power Foods for the Brain, and so far we've discussed toxic metals, how to avoid them, how to avoid the bad fats. So far, so good, but let's talk about what else we can do. I know we've talked a little bit about free radicals already, but could you give a quick overview, but then also tie it into the relationship to vitamin E?
Yeah, great question. Just as the part of normal metabolism, our cells create free radicals. And I kind of think of them as sort of like factory waste. You might be having a good factory that produces cars, widgets, whatever it is, but there's a certain amount of factory waste that goes into the process. And your body has many metabolic functions. And in the course of doing it, it produces free radicals. Now, what they actually are is oxygen. You breathe in oxygen, you breathe out carbon dioxide, but these oxygen molecules that are life-giving and essential to our biological function, they're unstable. By unstable, you get electrons in unstable orbits or the wrong number, and that's a free radical. It's just oxygen your body's been using that's now unstable. And the reason it's a problem is that unstable oxygen is suddenly transformed into a piranha that wants to take a chunk out of a cell membrane, a chromosome, a brain cell, whatever it might be. And
could that be a problem?
That could be a problem. Free radicals are responsible for lots of the damage of just day-to-day life. They lead to wrinkling of the skin, they lead to damage of the brain. Free radicals are kind of toxic in many, many ways. So antioxidants are the things that neutralize these oxygen-free radicals. And there are lots of them. And you and I have talked about beta carotene, the orange color in carrots. That's an antioxidant that knocks out free radicals. Lycopene is the red color in tomatoes, same story. And vitamin E is, people think of it as a fat-soluble vitamin, but it happens to be a very powerful antioxidant. And so we've gotten excited about it because it has some benefits, particularly for Alzheimer's disease, according to good research studies.
Wow. So share with us what the research says about vitamin E.
There have been a number of studies that have looked at this, but let me focus in particularly on one from Chicago, because you and I talked about this study before, the Chicago Health and Aging Project.
Yes.
They brought in people, and they didn't tell them what to do. They just tracked what they were doing on their own, and they found out that people who had a lot of vitamin E in their diet, compared to the people who didn't have very much vitamin E, had a huge difference in their risk of Alzheimer's disease. The people who had a lot of vitamin E, not from pills, not vitamin E they picked up at the health food store in a little capsule, vitamin E in the foods they were picking naturally from the grocery store, preparing at home. Those people who had the most vitamin E in their diet cut their Alzheimer's risk by about 50%. Now, this is over and above all of the other benefits. You and I have talked about, let's say I avoid saturated fat, let's say I avoid trans fats. You get benefit from all those things. I lace up my sneakers, that will help too. But the vitamin E, then whatever else you're doing, seems to cut the risk by about 50% too. So we think it's powerful stuff. But let me emphasize again, this is not a reason to race off to the store and go looking at the little vitamin E labels and buy a bottle of pills. Two reasons. Number one, it didn't work.
Oh.
In Chicago, it worked if it was from food. But the other thing is, when you get vitamin E in a pill, it's not the same as vitamin E in foods. And your body has 8 different forms there are 8 different forms of vitamin E in foods that your body can use. If I go to the store, it might have 1 form of vitamin E, maybe 2. And if you take a large amount of 1 or 2, it suppresses your body's absorption of the others.
Wow.
So you're doing yourself more harm. So in foods, walnuts, sesame seeds, almonds, something like that, you get the balance that nature has provided. You get all of them. And so that's the way to do it. Get it in foods.
Wow. Well, I mean, there's two different types, I mean, that I know of, like, that's in the vitamin E. There's the alpha and gamma. Can you
Right.
talk about those?
Yes. This will get you. Once you walk in the store, I would suggest not worrying about it too much. But yes, there is alpha tocopherol and gamma tocopherol, and there are other forms as well. And one food might be a little high in one food might be a little bit high in the other. If I have almonds, for example, they're very high in alpha tocopherol. If I have walnuts, they're high in gamma. But I think the best thing to do is to have variety.
Mhm.
And there is vitamin E in mangoes, in spinach, in the vegetables and fruits in general, but the mother lode of vitamin E happens to really be in the nuts and the
Mhm.
seeds. But as you know, I'm not big on really fatty foods in general, so
Right.
I suggest not going to the store and getting a humongous bag of walnuts and just eating them all day long, because that's, calorie-wise, that's a lot.
They're calorie bombs.
They are calorie bombs.
Yeah.
So my solution is to take nuts, let's say it's walnuts, pour them into my hand. Don't eat them.
Right.
Pour them into your hand. And once it hits your fingers, from the palm of your hand, once it hits your fingers, that's more than an ounce. Stop there. Now, crumble it up, put it on your oatmeal, on your pancakes, whatever it is. Use it as an ingredient. Don't use it as a snack food, because if you put the almonds or the sesame seeds or the walnuts into your hand and you throw them in your mouth, the next thing you do is fill your hand again.
Oh, that bag is going down.
The bag is gone. The bag is empty. You just ate 800 calories that you didn't really need. And you don't need that much. An ounce or something a day, I think perfectly fine. And so use it as an ingredient. Use it as a flavoring. Don't use it as a primary.
Dressings. I like to put like a
Yeah,
couple nuts
yeah,
in the
yeah.
dressings just to give it a little thickness and a little bit of fat.
Oh, and they have flavor. You have some sesame seeds or something like that. They're rich in gamma tocopherol, but sesame seeds, they have a lovely flavor.
Mhm.
Walnuts have a little bit different flavor, a little more mild, and you can have, sunflower seeds. Add them. Different foods have different ways you can combine them. So that's it. That's vitamin E. Food, not pills.
Food, not pills.
Mhm.
Well, I had heard there's a relationship between vitamin E and Alzheimer's, like you talked about. But what happens if you've been diagnosed with Alzheimer's already? Will it
Short,
help?
short answer, I don't know. There have been some studies. One in particular did show that when people they did what I told you not to do. They used supplements of vitamin E, and they did show some benefit. Other studies, not really. So I'll tell you what I think. I am going to say that a high vitamin E diet, the vitamin E acts as an antioxidant,
Mhm.
knocking out the free radicals that are doing the damage in the first place. If the damage has already been done, all you're really using the vitamin E for is to try to stop additional damage. So it's not going to paste the nerve connections back together if they've been shot. So I would use it more as a preventive. It's harmless. So you can certainly use it to try to reverse Alzheimer's, but whether you would achieve that, I would be actually surprised.
Wow. That's sad because we do have a huge epidemic coming up for Alzheimer's. I mean, it's going to be
Yeah.
impacting us in such a way. I mean, we've got kids. One end of the spectrum is autism, and then the other end is people with Alzheimer's. Wow.
Yeah,
I mean,
we do, but that's why the message has to be to do what we can now to prevent it.
exactly.
And it's not as if we don't have the tools that we should put to use. We can put them to use, the things you and I have discussed, and
Right.
all the side effects are good ones.
I know.
The very same thing that protects your brain also protects your heart, also helps your waistline. It's good in all those ways. So there's every reason to put those steps
Excellent.
into place now.
What is homocysteine? Where does it come from? And why is it so destructive to our body?
Homocysteine is something that doctors are kind of arguing about what it actually means, but homocysteine is sort of factory waste too, in a way.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really waste, but it's a product of cellular metabolism. So your cells are doing their things, creating energy for your body, and homocysteine is produced. That's normal. The issue is it builds up, and if your body doesn't get rid of it, it appears to be harmful to the heart and harmful to the brain. Now, researchers are arguing right now as to just how bad or not so bad it may be. But the take-home message here is that your body has a way to get rid of it, because there is some evidence that yes, I'm going to tell you, high homocysteine levels do seem to be toxic. And the way you get rid of it is not with an anti-homocysteine drug. You don't get rid of it with surgery. What you do, you get rid of it with food. And there are 3 B vitamins that work together to neutralize the homocysteine, get rid of it. Folate, which is a B vitamin, vitamin B6, and vitamin B12.
Oh, that sounds too easy.
It's super easy. And you can go to the store and they'll sell you folate, B6, B12, and that's fine. And in fact, researchers have done that. And in fact, there have been some studies showing actually some benefit in people who have had memory sputtering times where they're having trouble remembering things. And you do actually see some benefit from the use of B vitamins in some of these.
And was that the study done in the Netherlands?
Yeah, exactly. Right. They used folate in that study, and they showed memory benefit. Now, the people that they were testing were not really greatly impaired. These are people who are within the range that you and I might consider more or less normal. But nonetheless, it was encouraging. You do simple tests like how many animals can you name in a certain period of time? You're just trying to see how quick the gears can turn in their brain. And there are a number of tests that you can use. And they did show objective signs of improvement. They using just folate, but
they used synthetic. They used a pill form.
Right.
I'm wondering, would they get the same results if they did it with food?
Probably yes, or better. And in fact, let's talk about where these B vitamins come from in food. Folate, foliage, leaves.
Like there's a tie in there someplace.
Exactly. I mean, when people are trying to name compounds, they come up with, well, I got it out of foliage, so I will call it folate. I mean, that's where the name came from. And so that's where it is. Green leafy vegetables, very, very high in folate. B6 is in quite a lot of foods. You'll see a lot of it in vegetables, but also in the bean group as well. B12, you really got to supplement. That's where it comes from. But researchers have also patented supplements that have all 3 in them, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's not harmful, unlike, say, vitamin E, where it's going to goof up your absorption of others. I don't think you're going to do yourself any harm by taking those over the counter. But I always prefer to get them in foods if I can, because along with the folate come lots of other things. So anyway, folate, B6, B12. That's the group that gets rid of homocysteine. Will this help memory? Too early to say, but there have been some studies that have suggested a preventive effect. And as I mentioned earlier, for people where they're having some memory problems, you do see some signs of improvement there.
Okay. Well, is there a relationship between homocysteine and Alzheimer's?
I think there is. I want to stay tuned on this, because when I wrote Power Foods for the Brain, I was, I think, a little bit cautious in writing this, but nonetheless, I was drawing some lines between those two. And I think as time goes on, we're just going to have to see to what extent these things bear out. And the reason I say that is that with heart disease, homocysteine got a guilty verdict pretty early. It then appealed, and some researchers said they weren't so sure that homocysteine was so bad for the heart as they thought. From my standpoint, what do you think? I think it's a problem. I think it's a problem, and I think it builds up. It is a product of cellular metabolism that the body does want to get rid of, and if you're on a healthy diet, it tends not to build up. And so having foods in your routine that are rich in B vitamins will eliminate or reduce the homocysteine and have other benefits for you, because they also provide the vitamin E and whatnot that's useful.
Well, is there a test that you can determine your homocysteine levels?
Yes, doctors can. Yeah, every doctor can do it. It's easy and it's cheap. They could tell your homocysteine level, and they have normal values that go to their labs standard. So they'll tell you if you're high.
Is that a normal test that people do? Like when you go have your basic blood work test, or is that something you would have to ask for?
You might have to ask for it. A large number of doctors do it automatically. They're not 100% sure what to do with the results, other than say they heard at a medical meeting it might be a problem, but they couldn't remember.
So if it does come back high for for a normal doctor, like you just said, I mean, they don't know what to do with the thing. I mean, is there a pill or something they're going to say, take this pill that's going to help reduce homocysteine? Or
no, really not. Diet is the way to go.
Of course.
Your body uses B vitamins to eliminate the homocysteine. And it's not like cholesterol. You got a high cholesterol, you can do it with diet, or you can drive your cholesterol down with statins. I'm not recommending this, but they do happen to work. They happen to have that effect. With homocysteine, it's diet.
Okay. Excellent. Well, I've heard about a chemical called resveratrol.
Right.
What is it? Where do we find it? Tell me about it.
You'll find it all over the internet by people who are enthusiastic about red wine, and people who realize they could make more money by putting it into little pills and selling it that way. Resveratrol is in grapes, and it's one of many, many compounds that have been looked at because in a number of research studies, researchers have found this peculiar finding. People who drink red wine seem to have less risk of Alzheimer's. Not if they drink a huge amount, and not if they drink only a little bit. It's sort of that moderate use, maybe about a drink a day, something like that, maybe 2. And so that raised the whole question. Why? We don't know why, but different pieces of the puzzle come up. One is maybe it's the alcohol. Maybe there's something about the alcohol because we know alcohol changes brain chemistry. But wait a minute. Alcohol has a lot of risks to it. Alcohol increases the risk of several forms of cancer, not to mention the fact that it's clearly addicting and people run into problems with alcohol all the time. And so researchers have also said, well, I'm not sure that's the reason anyway, because if I'm having red wine, yeah, you got alcohol that came from fermentation, but you got all the parts of that grape that were extracted that are still there. And so researchers at the University of Cincinnati did some interesting studies. They brought in people who already had mild cognitive impairment. This is the condition where you're still yourself, but your memory is really not good, especially for words and names. And
what was your name again? I forget. Yeah.
Very common. What they tested was not red wine. They tested grape juice, ordinary grape juice that you could just buy at the store, a pint a day. So a cup in the morning, cup at night, whatever it might be. And over a 3-month period, they noticed substantially improvements in memory, better learning, better recall. So they thought,
was this just a regular diet that they were on, or
yeah,
they were just what they were normally averaging, what they do regularly, and then they just added some resveratrol to it?
They added grape juice to it, not specifically resveratrol. They added
grape juice.
Grape juice, and so their theory was that these are anthocyanins. Those are the pigments that make it purple, and it's quite a group of them, and that this was the issue. So, or this is the reason why they benefited. So they said, well, there's a lot of other foods that have anthocyanins, and then let's try blueberry juice. They did that 3-month test with people who had mild cognitive dysfunction and showed improvements for them in learning and in recall. Now, it's worth trying. It has no negative effects whatsoever. However, I want to talk about publication bias a little bit. When I hear about studies like this, I sometimes think, who's selling something here? And when people are selling supplements and whatever, your ears kind of prick up a little bit. So I personally think those were good studies. They were done by reputable people, but I'd like to see more studies to really see if it's going to bear out over time, because very often people get really excited about their pet thing and it doesn't work out. But give it a try. There's no reason not to. And anthocyanins that I mentioned are antioxidants, which, as you and I started out talking today, the orange one is beta carotene in carrots and sweet potatoes. The red one is in tomatoes and watermelons. That's lycopene. Anthocyanins are a variety of colors, but in grapes and in blueberries, that intense pigment, that's anthocyanins. So Add them to your diet.
So just eat them in their original package.
Oh yeah, okay, great question. The reason I use juices was because it's a standardized amount. So for research purposes, we like that. But does that mean you should not have blueberries? No, eat the blueberry itself. In fact, my favorite dessert, I got to tell you, of all,
Uh-huh.
is I will take and mix blueberries. You
Uh-huh.
go to the store, get organic blueberries,
Right.
delicious. Cut up a mango or a papaya and mix that with it, and a little bit of banana. And sometimes I'll sprinkle some almonds over the top. And it just sounds so easy and so healthy, but it is so delicious. So blueberries, mangoes, or papaya, and some bananas, and try it, and you will be it's out of this world.
Okay. Well, I'm going to share one with you then.
Okay.
I take bananas, mash it up, add some blueberries to it or whatever fruit you have, a little bit of vanilla extract, mash that up, add a handful of oats, okay, and then make those into little balls. You want to get the thickness, consistency, just so that it is a little bit that you can make it into a ball. Then put that in the air fryer, 10 minutes.
Really?
Oh, this was born out of sheer desperation because there's nothing in my house except Whole Foods. So I'm like, I have to have a cookie. So that was as close as I could come to a cookie. But oh my God, so good. Those are amazing. So just
I'll be right over.
Seriously. Wow.
That sounds great. That sounds great. It sounds very healthy. And that's the thing. So, sometimes if you have just blueberries, they're a little bit tart, and there's a limit to how many you can have. Grape juice, but when you combine these flavors, the banana will kind of quiet down the blueberries a little bit, and they mix together really nicely, so it becomes a lovely snack.
Yes, they do.
Beats the heck out of barbecued potato chips.
Yes, I will go with you there. Okay. This has been. Oh, wait a minute. Let's go back to the resveratrol for a second.
Okay.
Is there a relationship between resveratrol and Alzheimer's?
I don't really know. I don't know. This is an area where there has been a lot of work on it, and a lot of people are promoting various extracts, and probably resveratrol more than any, both for prevention and for treatment. My own view is that jury is still out.
Okay.
Whether there's a benefit, and if there is a benefit, if we even want to bother with those supplements, or if we don't want to just actually have the food that it came from. So I know that's a really cautious, disappointing answer, but that's kind of where I'm coming from with resveratrol. There's just been so much push for it, and you see it with lots of extracts, and there's money behind it, and so I just want to wait and see where we are with it. Okay. I don't think there's any danger. Don't get me wrong. I don't think there's any danger. I'm just not 100% convinced of the benefit.
But we're talking food, not supplements.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Well, let's talk coffee. Coffee is, I've been trying to get my husband off and weaned off of coffee for a while. We're down to 1 cup. Yeah. So there's a lot of controversy about coffee and saying, on one hand, it's the best thing since sliced bread. And on the other hand, it's the spawn of the devil. So, and everything in between. So what is your thoughts about coffee?
I don't think it's the devil. And oh, by the way, let me declare some biases. I'm not a coffee drinker. I don't like coffee. I don't like the taste of it, and I don't like the way it makes me feel. That said, when I look at the research, I have to say it does not suggest that coffee is terrible. And it also, there have been some studies suggesting that people who drink a lot of coffee have less risk of Alzheimer's disease. Now, the amount that you have to drink is fairly heroic, 3 or 4 or 5 cups a day, which makes a person impossible to live with. So they probably don't get any dinner invitations out to steakhouses, and that's probably why they have less Alzheimer's risk. Just kidding. To tell the truth, I do think, so stay tuned. There have not been a lot of studies on it, but the studies that have been done seem to suggest some potential benefit. So is the idea that you're getting antioxidants from the coffee bean? Is it that the caffeine has some benefit? Who knows? And I do think that coffee, despite what I said earlier, I don't think that caffeine is totally innocuous. for a couple of reasons. Not the least of which is just that it clearly does affect people's behavior.
Yeah.
I have a really good friend who I see not really great friend though. This person I see every few months, who is extremely talkative, just bubbly, and just, other people can't get a word in edgewise. And then once we got together and we had dinner with some other people, and I was surprised by how pleasant she was and letting other people talk. And I said, what's new in your life? She said, I'm trying a new thing. I'm not having any coffee. And suddenly this kind of agitated person was somebody other people could relate to. And most people have coffee all the time.
Yeah.
And they're grumpy when they haven't had it. And when they have it, they're kind of a little bit intolerable for about 45 minutes until their dose kind of levels out. They don't see it, but other people around them sometimes do. So I think we should be aware of that.
Well, it's got a huge half-life.
Oh, it does. And the half-life is different in different people. But you can have a cup of coffee that you finished by 9 a.m.
Right.
And that night, you haven't had any coffee at all during the day after that point, but you can have rocky sleep because there are traces of caffeine left in your system. Everybody is different. For some people, they eliminate it fairly quickly. For others, much more slowly. I am one of those people where if I even had a cola, cup of tea in the morning, my sleep is not as good at night. So it's good for people who have sleep issues to be aware of that. And speaking of which, sleep is important for the brain. That sleep is the time when your brain is catching up, integrating the experiences of the day. And if you have not slept, you can't integrate things you have learned, and you have trouble with retrieval. What was the name of that person? When you were well rested, you could come up with it. When you're not, you can't.
Well, and I've started using this is a Fitbit, and what I love is that it tracks your sleep.
Yeah.
And I've been fascinated by this. I mean, and it shows me, like you were up for 23 minutes. I'm like, really? I don't remember that at all. I mean, like I was out, like I woke up, went to sleep and woke up and nope, my Fitbit says, no, you were restless. And I'm like, okay. So it shows the changes that your body is going through. And I'm finding this fascinating, and also taking your advice and trying to get into bed at 10 and, lights down, trying. Sometimes better than others, but...
Well, that's because you have an active life and you're filled with great books and great websites and so many things that are just hard to tear ourselves away from.
It's true.
But I got to tell you, I learned about this when I was a medical student because we all worked a lot. We would arrive at the hospital Monday, work all Monday night and all day Tuesday, no sleep. And then we would go home, and then Wednesday was a normal day. And then Thursday, all Thursday night, all Friday. And then Saturday was a normal day. We could do that for a while. But then two things would happen within about a week. You would discover your memory was not good, and you had to write everything down. You could say to a person, I'll be there in 10 minutes. You couldn't remember it. You'd have to write down all the stuff that you have to do.
That's scary because you're...
Yeah, we were working in a hospital. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But the other thing was that it affects people's mood. And people would get kind of grumpy, and so they have extra coffee to perk themselves up, or they would get kind of labile where their moods would change from minute to minute. And the reason is clear, that in the first part of the night, the brain does what's called slow wave sleep, where you're integrating facts and words and things that are kind of piled on your mental desk during the day, and then you've got to file them away at night so you can find them again. If you're up all night, your brain doesn't do that filing process. And then in the early morning hours, when you're asleep, you're dreaming. And when you're dreaming, your brain is integrating emotions and also physical skills and things. If you're awake during that time, you're not able to get your emotional keel back tightened up. So people who are up all night they're grumpy, they feel crummy. And plus, if you're up all night, you will do anything just to get through the day. So your resolve to eat steamed broccoli has suddenly been replaced by onion rings and chocolate and whatever stuff, because Anyway, so
No, I've been there. Been there.
well,
At
everybody.
work, I've got a woman who keeps a secret stash of chocolate, and every once in a while, I'll pop indoors. I need chocolate, please. I'm going to
Well,
kill somebody if I don't have chocolate sometime soon. So
this is my case for going to bed at 10 o'clock. No matter how good your book is, go to bed at 10 o'clock. And even if you wake up early at 5 o'clock or something like that, your brain has had time to get you out of the way and start filing things away and getting emotions tightened up so that it won't make chocolate unappealing, but it will make your resolve stronger.
Right.
So that you are more yourself and you are more making decisions as opposed to being dragged around by kind of an unwell slept brain.
All right. Well, we're working on it at our house. Okay. Right. Dr. Benjamin Spock was probably throughout my childhood. I mean, I think we had that book on our shelf.
Baby and Childcare, yeah.
Baby and Childcare. I mean, somebody gave it to me when I had my kids, and it's just one of those go-to, the Bible. So share with me your story about Dr. Spock.
Yeah, Ben was a great guy. He was a very kind man and a great physician. And he wrote Baby and Childcare because he wanted to he wanted to help people to raise kids in a better way. Yeah. And he was very big on not beating children. I know this sounds crazy. Why would anybody have to say that? Well, he was, living in the early part of the 20th century when the whole idea was spare the rod, spoil the child. And he said, wait. Why don't we? So anyhow, he wrote Baby and Childcare. It was very controversial. You're going to coddle these children. But it became so useful. It was the biggest selling book other than the Bible for years and years and years and years. Anyway, so Ben got up in years and he started to develop a lot of medical symptoms. He had a chronic cough and he had pains in his legs and all kinds of problems. And his doctors basically said, you're old, Ben. What do you expect? This is just what it is. And his wife, Mary, talked him into changing his diet. And they adopted a plant-based diet.
Now, what year was this?
Ooh, I'm going to say it must have been somewhere around 1980, something like that.
Now, where did she get the idea from?
Mary's a thoughtful person who has been exposed to all kinds of good advice and shared it with Ben. She was Ben's second wife and considerably younger than Ben and had kind of been around looking at the world of healthy eating. And she just said, Ben, I'm not ready to lose you. So she got him on a healthy diet and he did great. I got to tell you, he lost weight. Oh, wait, I'm going to tell you, this was not the 80s. This was the 90s because I met him in, I think, 91. He had changed his diet. It had revolutionized his health. He lost weight. His energy was revolutionized.
Yeah, it's true.
And he became really down on meat and on dairy and so forth. And he and I got to talking about the need for parents to understand about the foods that they're giving to kids. Because, here he was. He had been trying all of his life to help people to treat their kids better and to be more thoughtful and to be really good parents and good role models. But in the first 6 editions of Baby and Childcare, it said kids need meat for protein and dairy for calcium. And he said, oh my God, was I wrong? They don't need those things. What they need are grains and beans and vegetables and fruits. And so he rewrote the book. The 7th edition of Baby and Childcare effectively said kids should be raised as vegetarians or vegans. But anyway, his own, and he held a press conference with me in 1992 saying that parents should be warned about the health risks of giving their kids dairy products. And this made headlines everywhere.
Did the dairy industry just have seizures?
The top baby doc is saying, don't give milk to babies. It was, yeah, exactly. And people went ballistic, but he was right. And I got to tell you, he was years ahead of his time. For this guy to be in favor of being kind to kids, and he was anti-war and all this kind of stuff. He was just an amazing guy. But and he became really quite a good friend, and he lived many, many, many years. He finally died in his mid to later 90s, and he was he just got many, many extra years out of a healthy diet. And what it illustrates for me is several things. It's not too late. As a person in their mid-70s will go to see a doctor, and they've got heart problems, and they've got vein problems, and their memory is sputtering, and their diabetes is out of control. And the doctor can say, you're old, you're up in years. Say, wait, excuse me. I'm not quite ready to check out yet. What can I do to take care of myself? So, Ben's 80 or something like that. He says, all right, I got another decade in me. I don't want to be struggling. I want to be as healthy as I can be. And Mary was unbelievable. She would open the refrigerator door and there'd be a little bit of cheese in there. And she would say, Ben, what's this? Oh, I was at the farmer's market and they had it. I couldn't resist. And
those queso morphines, they're addicted.
Right. And so he would go back into the kitchen the next day and he'd open the refrigerator door and he'd say, Mary, what happened to that cheese that I put into the refrigerator here? And she'd say, Ben, I love you too much. I threw it away. So she really kept him on the straight and narrow. And Mary is the loveliest person you will ever meet. And
what an honor to be on the same stage with him, huh?
I got to say, he was always an extremely thoughtful person. And after he passed away, there were quite a number of memorial services to him. And I remember one that we had here in Washington where I went, and Martin Luther King III came to say that Ben Spock had been so good to his father, Martin Luther King Jr., that he came to pay his respects.
Wow.
Anyway, that's a whole other story. But my moral of this particular story is it's not too late.
It's not too late. All right. Yeah. I like that. It's nice that he changed, he embraced it, and then fixed it. So
yeah, he sure did.
All right. Let's sum it up. What do we need to do to have a strong memory?
Lots of things, but to put them in simple categories, there are certain foods that you already knew are bad for your heart. I'm talking about the fats that are in meat and dairy products. Well, if you avoid them, it's not just good for your heart to avoid them, it's also good for your brain. Get away from the bad fats. We've talked about metals, iron and copper, also aluminum. You want to be really cautious about all of those. They're not doing your body any good. Mercury. You don't need mercury at all. You don't need aluminum at all. You need some iron, some copper, but only trace amounts. So be careful. Be careful about those.
Something that came across on an email from someone, and it was talking about kale absorbing thallium. Have you heard about this?
Uh-oh. Now you're giving me some homework. I'm going to have to look that up.
Because, and what bugged me was that it was one doctor, one study, one person that had too much thallium, and they were blaming it on kale. So, of course, they're already starting to jump on the bandwagon about kale. Oh, my God, don't eat kale because it's got thallium and heavy metals.
All right. Well. Whenever you'll hear things like that. It's always important to look at populations that eat these foods. Start here. How are they doing?
Right.
And we know very clearly that people who eat dark green leafy vegetables are healthier than other people. And then we try to explain that. But it is true that green vegetables grow in the ground, and whatever's in the ground is going to get into the plants. And so if it's polluted soil, that's what's going to pick up in them. So it's that said, if you're deciding I'm not going to eat vegetables, I'm going to eat meat instead, what's the animal been eating? The animals have been eating.
Yeah.
They bioconcentrate things far worse than in vegetables. So no, I think kale is probably one of the healthiest foods that you can.
I know.
Get
but when I saw that go by, it was like, really?
No, don't go crazy. You can find something to indict anything. But back to what we should be doing. Okay. Avoid the bad fats. Be careful about the excess metals. Do get your vitamin shield up, and we've talked about vitamin E in particular. But don't forget the brightly colored foods. We mentioned anthocyanins today, but also the whole range, that whole rainbow. The reason your retina has color vision is not just to make the world look cool, but it's to attract you to healthful foods.
And our food is so bright and colorful.
Right, and that's just your retina guiding you to antioxidants. That's the whole point of it. Do lace up your sneakers. Exercise is good. a brisk walk, 40 minutes, 3 times a week. That's my prescription. If you want to do more than that, that's fine. And get intellectual exercise, but I know every single person who's watching you now is getting all the intellectual exercise they ever need, so that's not a problem. But then the thing that everyone has the most problem with is stop. You got to stop. And that's why I say 10 o'clock at night, go to sleep. You need to stop physically exercising so your muscles can rest. You need to stop the intellectual input into your brain so that your brain can say, thank you, I will file away the experiences of the day, and we'll start again tomorrow. So we put those together. We're not going to live forever, but I am convinced that we can cut the risk of Alzheimer's dramatically, and we can live longer and healthier lives, and families can stay together longer as opposed to having the family be torn apart by this.
Because it's devastating. I mean, we just lost my mother-in-law. She was in the nursing home for 7 years. Okay, 7 years. When she went in, it was $4,000 a month, and she was in a place that was not, like a major metropolitan city, so it was a little bit more cost effective there. But $4,000 going in, and by the time she died, it was almost $9,000 a month.
Right.
A month.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it's terribly expensive. And the quality of life that we have, for so many older folks, they're finally at a time where they should be able to enjoy life, but they end up losing everyone and everything that ever mattered to them because the neurons are no longer connecting. And it's not as if this happens and a week later you're dead. You can live this way year after year after year, and the quality of life is shot. So we're not going to reduce it to zero, but I think we can reduce it, and there's no reason not to. And even though the research is continuing, and it must continue, we know enough to put these steps into action now. It's never too late, but it's also never too early. So when people are teenagers, if they are on healthy diets, great. If people are in young adulthood, great, put it to work then. And as I say, all the side effects are good.
The kids make fun of me at school. They do. Because I bring my own cooler, and if they dare to come in to my classroom bringing stuff,
right,
we stop, we take a minute, we look at we learn how to read the label, and then I give it back to them and then said, enjoy that, But they know, because they know if they come into my classroom, I will be sharing my thoughts.
Best lesson they're getting all day.
Well, I try every day. I try to bring that information to them and let them know. So, as a matter of fact, I'm just going to share this with you. One of my students is graduating this Thursday, and as a graduation present, her mother is having me come over. We're going to clean the house, the fridge, all the products. We're going to the grocery store, and we're going to learn how to shop. We're going to learn how to read nutrition labels, and then we're going to go home and cook. And she's already ordered the pans and all the things that I sent her to get. She's getting an air fryer, so I'm going to teach her how to make the banana blueberry oat balls, in the air fryer. So this is one of her graduation presents to her. So her mother's teaching her through me how to, and the mother's going to do it too. So it's a mother-daughter thing that they're both doing together. So this was one of her graduation presents. And what a graduation present, right?
I love it. That is fantastic.
Yeah. So thank you once again. Always amazing. I always learn so much from you. You're just incredible. So. Oh,
well, thank you for including me. And I hope the people watching this have enjoyed it as well. And thanks for letting me share.
Well, we're coming back in episode number 5 for Power Foods for the Brain. So
great.